Alhamdulillah. There we go, we're in. And as far as Israelis go, the terrifying moments should be starting now. And I'm totally relaxed, yeah. The checkpoints were a dangerous place to be for everybody. For 10 years, I lived in two completely different worlds, Israeli and Palestinian, daily going through checkpoints, never knowing what would happen or could happen on either side.
That's our wedding in the living room.
I came to Israel because of my wife. We came in 1950 to Israel. We went up to the kibbutz Sasa up in the north. We spent a week or two there. Esther was the one that really wanted to stay in Israel.
I realized that I was at home in this kibbutz dining room. There was nothing to eat hardly. But I felt I was in a family that I belonged to be in. Zionism was a trauma from the Shoah. It was so obvious. It didn't take any brains. We had to survive.
I promised her that we will come back someday, but I had to go back to America and go to work. That's what a nice Jewish boy does. Worked at Atomic Energy Center in Oak Ridge, Tennessee for 4 years. Became a nuclear engineer there. One of the first of 300 at that time. And then we moved to San Diego for the last 10 years before immigrating. My identity as a Jew was one that I wanted to maintain that identity. And I want to assure that our children would not intermarry. Living in Israel seemed to be part of it.
He, at the time, was riding in a big club, in a jockey club, and I was from a kibbutz, you know, so we had the not so nice horses and not so nice equipment, and they had the fancy horses and the fancy equipment, and you know, she was doing very well.
This is the building that we moved into in 1970. This is where most of our childhood was spent. Our next door neighbors were the Pereses, Shimon and Sonia Peres, and their 3 children, Chemi, Yoni, and Tziki. Our doorbells were right next to each other, so many a time when people would come to the Pereses, they would actually ring our doorbell. So you never knew who was at the door. The doorbell would ring, you'd open the door. Once Elizabeth Taylor was standing there. Another time there were 10 Druze sheikhs with their wives.
Everybody knew everyone. It's like my father used to say that a small country is like a big family.
Down the road lived the rabbins, Yitzhak and Leah. The neighborhood was full of all kinds of kids, a lot of immigrants from the United States and Western Europe who were all trying to belong, together with the sons and the daughters of the kids that were born here.
Well, she was a very special person, and I thought she'd be the world champion in horse riding. I liked her a lot. And we were sort of close, I think, for a while. When the family moved to Ramat Aviv, it was in the golden days between 67 and 73. We were riding the wave of euphoria after the 6 Days War. The Palestinian problem was not a big issue at the time. The generals were the heroes, and we felt quite secure. So when you get a notion that you can, in 6 days, finish the job or complete the task, it gives you a notion that there's no limit to what you can do.
We didn't know it was arrogant. We just thought that we were invincible.
Nothing can stop you, actually. There's no limit to power.
And in 1973, Yom Kippur War broke out when I was 15 and Chemi was 15. At 2 o'clock, the siren went off. And the Yom Kippur War had started as a surprise attack against Israel, and it was meant to annihilate Israel. It broke everything. From a problem-free, happy childhood, you found yourself at the age of 15 going to funerals. There was a complete loss of confidence in the leadership of the country.
And you started to ask questions. Where is it heading, and how resilient are we? When are we going to be really safe?
And as every group of stable kids have their leader, the star was Arik Torin. Who was killed in the Yom Kippur War.
זה ממש לא ברי. באיזה מה? ביום כיפור ב-1973. אוקיי? אז אל תיגעו בנרות, בסדר? זה לזכר מישהו אמיתי. זה לזכר הרבה אנשים אמיתיים.
I was drafted into the paratroopers, and in order to get your wings, you had to jump out 3 times. I never broke my leg in a horse. It was ironic that I broke my leg jumping out of a plane, and after my service was over, I left Israel and started my equestrian career.
Nancy trained in Europe because there were no facilities in Israel at all, no trainers. A few horses, but mainly Israeli horses, which are Arabian bred, too small, too high-strung for dressage or show jumping. So the only way to really practice was to go overseas to Europe or the US.
The period in Holland from 1982 to 1983 was the most intensive period as far as dressage training. I was shortlisted for the 1984 Olympics, but as with many other motivated riders, we ran out of money. So we didn't quite make it. But at that time, a horse that would have been ready for the Olympics would have cost about $250,000. But the period was during the first Lebanese War. It was in 1982. All of the individuals and the companies in Israel were busy with supporting hospitals. Nobody really had the time of day to listen to a story about a girl who wants to ride in the Olympics. Alisa Simon, who was in charge of this whole operation of getting me to the Olympics, she was my fundraiser, my friend. She was in charge of the whole thing. And she told me I have to pack my bags, put the horse on the plane, and come back home. 3 weeks before I came back home, I met Frankie in Belgium. We fell in love. I came back to Israel, and Frankie followed 2 weeks later.
Although I was successful in what I was doing in England and had a lot of friends, once in a while you go somewhere and somebody is saying something not so nice because you are an Israeli or a Jew or whatever, and then you think, yeah, I don't want to raise my kids here. And that was the reason, I believe.
We're the same age, Dror and I, when we both finished our years of training abroad and basically came back to Israel. And that was the beginning of 10 very intensive years of being part of the horse world in Israel, building it, setting up infrastructures, writing our rule book, applying for membership in the FEI. It's just part of me, a drive to always excel at whatever I do and do the best at whatever I'm doing. And that's what makes a competitive rider. What makes a champion is a lot of hard work. What a person would be seeing when they say a good rider ride is the unity. And hopefully the invisibility of the riders aids their actions. You want to see the horse. So your challenge as a rider is to bond with the horse in such a way that they want to cooperate. They allow themselves to submit, and there's that ability to form a partnership with them as athletes.
Nancy and I competed in the high jump competition in the south of Israel in the mid-80s. It's one of the only puissance competitions that we had at the time.
You could have 3 attempts at this jump. I approached it the first time, totally chickened out, just turned the horse away. I was so terrified. 1.75 meter looked like the Empire State Building to me. It was huge. And the second time I approached the jump, I had a misunderstanding, a miscalculation. Came around the third time, said it's now or never. I got the striding right, I got the energy right, got the balance right, and we cleared it. When you clear a jump like that, you've never jumped that high, it feels like you just touched heaven. And I held that high jump, the Israeli high jump record, for 20 years. My professional life and career over the years has been fascinating and highly successful. My personal life, on the other hand, has been somewhat of an obstacle course. Here, Frankie and I are getting married, and it was a civil wedding in the townhouse of Bemel. When we came back home to Israel, we had a wonderful garden party reception. My mother came and my sister came, and my father and my brother and my sister, the religious members of my family, did not come.
After a year, I must say I was thankful, she divorced him, and there were no children involved. How I would have reacted to had there been children and she stayed married, I don't know. I don't know. That was the end of that pasuk.
That was marriage number 1, which didn't last for long. Quite soon after that, I was in a relationship. The result of that new relationship was a pregnancy. The pregnancy lasted and the relationship didn't. My brother was the culmination or the epitome of all things successful in this country. He was an excellent straight A valedictorian in high school. In the Army, he was an outstanding officer. Then he went straight into medical school for 1 year. And at the end of his first year at medical school, he went for his big trip abroad.
Came back, came to my office wearing beads. So I said, what are you doing with beads? He says, I'm going back to India, something about Hare Krishna. I don't remember what it was. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
And then slowly but surely he said, okay, but before I become Hare Krishna, I want to go check out what Judaism has to give me. And slowly but surely he started becoming more and more religious.
And then there's a process of radicalization. It usually starts with posing questions, which is, are you happy with your life? Are you looking for more in life? Why are we alive? And then they come up with all the answers. And many people, and not only in Judaism, in Islam, in Christianity, and in many different religions, find the answers to their questions there.
My dad's a nuclear engineer and he wasn't happy. And Roger persuaded him that instead of going to work, he should come with him to Jerusalem and start hearing lectures about Judaism. And my dad started going to Jerusalem.
I just felt I had to do it, and I have to live the life of a Jew.
It was very difficult for my mother. We weren't brought up in a religious house. We were Reform in San Diego.
Or why he needs the strictures of Bratslav Hasidut. I can't understand this. It tells you when to go to the bathroom, it tells you when to eat, it tells you when to say this, when to not say that. I don't understand that.
Being Orthodox really means a full-time observance. Lots of laws, but it's like learning the rules to a great game.
They tried to get me into it, but was never in it, and I'll never be in it. As we all know, all these religious yeshiva boys only take, they don't give. It makes us very, very angry, very, very upset.
My father becoming religious and my brother and my sister totally changed our family as we knew it. And the effect it had on me was from being a successful person, I became kind of a failure. This is my wedding dress for the second marriage, for the religious marriage. I joined into the religious way of life and community, but it was about 15 years or so of being under tremendous pressure from the religious members of my family, and I was craving for a quiet, normal, more spiritual family life. And my religious brother offered to introduce me to a man who was looking for a wife. And for some reason, I agreed to meet him, and one thing led to another, and we got married. I must say, in all honesty, that wedding night was one of the happiest moments of my life. I was very much in love, and I felt that I was entering this hall of spirituality and beauty and purity. 2 weeks later, it started falling apart. I never fit in. I never, to the religious families there, especially the religious women, maybe it was because my face was sunburnt from all the years, and maybe because of an athletic way of moving, or maybe the skirt just wasn't the right Orthodox skirt, I don't know, or the stockings were wrong. Full-length stockings, so these are thick ones for the winter. Some are a little bit more sheer, but I never got it right. I kept on riding. I had said to my future husband that the one thing I will not stop doing is riding. I would leave the house with my riding clothes and then the religious clothes on top, peeling off the layers as I'm driving to Tel Aviv, and then riding, and then on the way back, getting dressed again and getting out of the car in the religious neighborhood fully dressed again. Within a month into the marriage, I started hearing him say that things are a little bit down financially, and I'll have to go back to work as a riding instructor. This came as a shock to me because before the marriage, I was assured that I would never have to work again. I made a few friends, and one of them, she told me that the women that are belittling me and gossiping about me behind my back, they're actually jealous of you. And I couldn't believe it. I said, what do you mean? And she said, believe me, most of us would love to be in your place, having been outside, in the outside world. We have kid after kid after kid. We work outside the home. We have to fit into this very strict Orthodox community, which we do, and most of us don't want to be anywhere else. And she was one of the few totally honest women that I met. I realized then the community is rife with everything that they ridicule, which is family violence, child abuse, hypocrisy, racism par excellence. And it was just a terrible, terrible, terrible traumatic shock for me. I understood that this is not the life that I wanted and that we had to get divorced. And I definitely did not want to raise my kids in this community. I got pregnant immediately as soon as we got married. I left Israel when I was 6 months pregnant. I flew to the States to my brother. It was a transatlantic divorce. If I hadn't gotten the divorce before the baby was born, then the baby could have been used as ammunition in order to not give me a divorce. And according to Jewish law, as long as the baby is not born, he's not yet an entity on his own. I prevailed. And then I found myself to be a single mother of 2 young boys. In 1999, I was invited to be the announcer at a show jumping competition. And she said, I have to welcome the delegation of the Palestine Equestrian Federation. And I come from a very right-wing family, and we have had nothing to do with Arabs. We were pretty much mainstream Israelis in as much as all Arabs are murderers, all Arabs are terrorists. This was mainstream. There was nothing unusual about this. You didn't have to be very right-wing, but we were a right-wing family. And when she said that to me, I told her to get lost. And she wouldn't let go. And she said, there's a delegation here from the Palestine. And I'm thinking, the Palestine what? Who Palestine? What are you talking about? And she said, they're sitting over there. So I looked to the right and I saw 3 men. Men. They didn't have horns and they didn't have smoke coming out of their nostrils or anything. And I looked back at her again and I said, no way. Anyway, she said, you have to. You're the only one whose English is good enough, who can speak politely, even though you might not believe what you're saying. And I said, okay, so I extended a very warm welcome. At that time, I was working at a stables a little bit north of Tel Aviv. And over the next few weeks, the tall, dark, handsome one started showing up at the stables. And he convinced me to maybe start working part-time in Jericho. I was terrified when I drove down there, and just as the hours went by, the fear started dissipating. And he took me to meet Dr. Sami Musalam, who was the head of Yasser Arafat's office in Jericho. When Arafat had come back with his men in 1994, he had set up presidential offices in each of the main cities, which was Jericho, Gaza, I think Ramallah as well.
Hello, Dr. Sami. Can I hug you?
Yeah.
Oh.
So Dr. Sami was the big boss. He was the head of the whole thing in Jericho. But he was the boss of everything, of the whole city.
Boss.
Dr. Sami always called me the boss, but he's the boss. But we enjoyed that. But what office do you think I should have run for? Mistress of...
Mayor of Jericho.
A mayoress of Jericho.
In our mentality, if somebody he knows something to teach, he doesn't like to give it to somebody else. And he wants to keep it for himself to not to let many trainer on the country. For Nancy, she gave me everything. Without hiding anything for me. Now, alhamdulillah, this is thanks from after God, Nancy, I'm the best rider and trainer on Palestine. I follow her.
Okay, so tell us, show us. How long have you been here? 8 months?
Here it's already 8 months.
And what do we see around?
This is Ramallah.
Ramallah, okay.
Kufr Aqab, Atarot,
Okay.
Beit Hanina.
Mm-hmm.
Tel Franci, it's you can see it from here, big building.
That's French Hill.
Yeah.
I see my house.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all close to us.
Wow.
From here you can see everything.
Yeah.
Khalid was brought to us by, his name is Abu Rahme, and he said, I want to try this boy with you. He lives in the refugee camp, and they need help. And I said, okay. We asked him, did you ever ride a horse? He said no. Did you ever touch a horse? He said no. Did you ever feed a horse? He said no. Okay.
Good, you're hired. You're hired.
Well, the first year, he never looked into Nancy by the eyes.
Because he was so shy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always talked with her, head dropping down. And now look what he is.
Now he looks me in the eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, they know, and why are you following Nancy and taking order from Nancy? What do you think? I said, I don't care. Mom, I want to be like her. يلا jumping position. سكر جيك هيك، ايوه كعبك تحت. جنبي خليك jumping position يلا بابا. ارفع 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 ارفع، ايوه ماشي كثير. تنساش. يلا ترد شوي خليك حصان. يلا وليد اسرع. يلا.
I saw him crying in his mother's arms. I walked over, I sat next to him, and I just quietly said to him, the jump didn't work out, right? And he said no. And I told Khalid that we have to do well now, that I think he needs a little bit of help with this student. The lessons that the kids had from day one were professional and demanding. I set high standards for them. And within 1 year, we had our first Palestinian equestrian team. And our first competition was in Jordan.
Do you want to know this?
This was in Jordan. And this is Dr. Sami.
Dr. Sami.
Princess Alia, the daughter of King Hussein.
Prince Hussein.
And the sister of Princess
Haya.
Haya.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have also from Gaza
The first Palestinian team riding abroad.
Exactly.
This is in Algeria.
in Algeria. It's made. It's like the million shahid.
In the different countries we went to, Jordan, Algeria, and later Dubai and Abu Dhabi. As we all know, the Gulf states are extremely wealthy, and the riders there were wearing riding clothes and boots and helmets that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So Khalid felt very awkward about it. He arrived with the best we could come up with, rubber boots and a plastic helmet, and I just told him, pull yourself up, sit up straight, keep your heels down, and get out there and ride. And he did. And he really made me proud, because I think that to be there amongst all that wealth, representing his country, I think also knowing that he's there with an Israeli trainer, even though it wasn't official, and he was so proud of me. He just didn't look left or right.
But nobody will accept this thing. Even when I said, my teacher, she's Israeli, she said, what? Khaled, are you crazy? I said, that's okay, because we are in the sport. But when we talk with the people, and Nancy, how she go in the people, she is it's the same like she's dealing with like the family, talking, eating, and they start knowing Nancy more and more and more. She's okay, Israeli, but she's on BC, she's good, she's Palestinian.
I think 2 days after I made a decision to move there full-time, the Intifada broke out. And I was teaching, and everything was normal, and then just pandemonium broke loose, shouting and telephone calls, and you have to get out of here, you have to get out of here. Went home, turned on the news. All hell was breaking loose all over the West Bank, I think in Gaza as well. And at that moment started my, my double life for the next 9 years. The next day I had to go to work, but my work within 1 day became enemy territory. I knew that if I didn't come back the next day, that I would never come back. So I came back the next day and parked the car here in the church and walked over the field. When you came into the club that morning, there was nobody. It was a ghost town. And you saw me, and I will speak in proper English, because you basically said, "What are you doing here?" Do you remember that? You were shocked. And I looked at you and I started laughing, and I said, I came to work. It was life-threatening to go to Jericho after the second Intifada started, because within 2 or 3 days, Jericho was hermetically sealed off, physically sealed off.
Go away! What are you doing here?
The whole area, the fields and the desert around Jericho, was patrolled 24/7 by the Israeli army, tanks and jeeps and patrols and the works. So I would park my car in the church and make my way to the little highway there. That would be the no man's land part, because there I was still Israeli. But as soon as I crossed over the barrier there and walked 10 meters in, I was breaking the law. Because of the Intifada, there was a law that Jewish Israelis are not allowed into Area A. As the Intifada unfolded, the army dug a bigger and bigger ditch, which was almost impassable. It became so deep and so wide. I would walk another kilometer or so into the Palestinian territory, and then the director of the club would pick me up and turn around and just race back to the club. I just had this conviction that I would never ever be shot at by an Israeli soldier, and the Israeli soldiers were basically, literally, my nephews, sons of my friends, and it was family. And as far as the Palestinians shooting me or trying to hurt me, it was theoretical. I never ever felt in danger. I received threatening phone calls and letters in the mail threatening me. There was one of my family members, I think about 2 years into Jericho, that actually called me on the phone and said that threatened me and said if I don't stop taking my kids down to Jericho, that they would report me to the police. My answer was basically in polite English, mind your own business. You learned how to swim there, learned how to ride a bike there, how to ride a horse.
How to ditch the Israeli army. In the beginning, it was a secret. Taking me to Jericho once a week, twice a week, and lying to my friends that I'm going to my father, but the truth, I was going to Jericho. Even now, even today, just few of my friends know.
They still don't believe that you participated in the reception, in the meeting with Arafat.
He's the first famous guy I ever met, Arafat, so it was pretty cool when you are 7 years old. And we took the picture and I still got it till today. And once I took it to school, the picture. And I showed my friends, look, me and Arafat in one picture. And they told me it's fake. No way that it's you with Arafat.
They were given the gift of a new language, a new culture, a new way of looking at things, and an awareness of what racism is within a society, between societies, between cultures, between individuals. And I think that that enriched them in the long run. Liel loved horses and became a top rider. He also won the Israeli championships at the age of 14, and Liel rode till he was about 16. And Liel was actually accepted into one of the top units in the intelligence corps. He speaks fluent Arabic. I was delighted about it because on the one hand, he's very helpful to his country, Israel, but at the same time, also very fair to the Palestinians. But he had decided to defer the draft by 1 year. And why are you deferring the draft by 1 year? Because I'm going to study the Gemara, which is part of the Torah, part of the Bible. There is a law in Israel that you can receive exemption from the army if you are studying in a yeshiva, if you are ultra-Orthodox. So eventually he obviously didn't go to the army.
The problem of seeing Liel is like seeing someone I'm not recognizing anymore. I don't think it's the real him.
This is the dress that I wore at the Pan-Arab Games in Algeria. And as I walked in with the Palestinian team, it was the evening of Yom Kippur, so I was a little bit emotional, thinking of my family back in Israel, getting ready for the fast on Yom Kippur, and all of Israel shutting down for Yom Kippur, which is our holiest and most solemn and saddest day of the year. And just as the sun was setting, the Palestinian team entered the stadium, and 50,000 people started roaring and chanting in support of the Palestinian team, singing Fil Ruh, Fil Dam, Nafdik Ya Palestine, which basically means with blood and with our spirit, we will redeem you, Palestine. And I felt quite alone in that stadium, but I did it. I walked in with my head high, and I was the trainer of the Palestinian equestrian team, and I had high heels for some crazy reason, and I did the whole walk around the stadium with high heels, and fasted the next day. My son. I felt that the world was my oyster, that together with Shimon Peres, I was going to bring in the new Middle East. Anything in any community, so for me it was the equestrian community, anything that could lower the level of hatred, anything that could lower the level of violence and build any kind of bridge was a blessing. And after the Intifada started, it was viewed as a betrayal, just working with the Palestinians. For them, it was extremely difficult to keep working with me because they had to deal with Israel and the Israeli army as an enemy, but working with them in their midst, a Jewish Israeli woman who they loved and admired and respected. So this tension, this kind of tension between the larger political or security aspect of the whole thing, it was always there. And living right next to it was the personal side of, this is what I want to do. You can tell how happy I looked, excited, in love, the works. Things started falling apart around 2005, 2006. I totally lost my trust in my partner, the director of the club. Our relationship became a little bit crowded. I was not the only woman in his life. So that was a very, very, very painful period. And it was in sync with the club also tapering off, money that was raised for beautiful projects that we had there, the therapeutic riding program. All these monies that were coming in were not arriving at their correct destination. But I think by 2005, 2006, after a few years of the Intifada and the total breakdown of trust between Palestinians and Israelis and the bottomless pit of hatred on both sides, I think I was getting a little bit tired. Being so heartbroken and so devastated and so tired. At that moment, I understood why people kill themselves. And I also understood why people don't kill themselves. And I didn't. When I came back to the job market in Israel, I think I was 52 at the time, and I had to find my way back into the working place as a full-time trainer. And I became the trainer of this group that was comprised mostly of Ethiopians. I had the amazing luck to train a young boy named Oded Yitzchak.
הייתי לא אוהב ללמוד, לא יכול לשבת בכיתה ללמוד. פתאום אמרו, יש חוג דבר כזה סוסים. אמרתי, טוב, אני אנסה את זה, אני חייב לראות מה הולך פה. הייתי עושה קצת שטויות, ואמרו לי, כאילו, אתה צריך לשנות את ההתנהגות שלך בשביל להיות בסוסים. אז באמת עשיתי סוויץ' ושיניתי את ההתנהגות שלי, כי באמת זה סקרן אותי, הסוסים.
We started out with a small group of kids, and within a year we had 20 of these kids in competitions. And I think that the 10 years in Jericho opened up a whole new world to me of what it's like to be disadvantaged with a lot of racism. I got involved more and more in judging, jumping, judging internationally, dressage judging in Israel. הרוכב השני, ליישר עוד איבה טובה ובטוחה. And recently started a wonderful project in the Israeli Equestrian Federation, call it the Little League. And it's a dressage and now an equitation league where the judge comes to the club. And this enables hundreds of riders that might not be able to afford to come to the national shows. It enables all of these kids and families to take part of the competition world. I finally fulfilled my 30-year-long dream or ambition of going to law school. I had to decide between law and the equestrian world as a profession. And now I'm just finishing up this unfinished business. So if I have to compare who I trust more, people or horses, horses win hands down, because they will always tell the truth. It's been an amazing, incredible journey so far, and I've gone to all kinds of places that a nice Jewish girl shouldn't have gone to. If the past is anything to go by, I believe the future is going to be equally unreigned.